All right, cool. So yeah, so I'm here with Michael Free. So thank you so much for taking the time to join us on this lovely stormy Friday.
Well, thanks for taking the time with me too.
Awesome. Yeah. So Michael, let's just jump right to it. So I know that you're doing a lot of different things. Right now, you're located in Waterloo. Why don't you tell us a bit about about yourself, your education, and kind of what brought you into this space?
Yeah, that'd be a great thing to bring up. My background is I have a management studies diploma from Conestoga College in Kitchener.
Gotcha.
Um, and for the last little while, I've been working as a technology professional in both the Toronto and Kitchener Waterloo area. So some of the background that I have is in um, software licensing and copyright, digital signage, and kiosk remote management, data centers. I've done a little bit of system administration, some tech support, and I'm currently working right now with a security firm in Waterloo. Right now, I'm also running the Bitcoin Bay Kitchener Waterloo meetups here in every third Wednesday of every month.
That is awesome. So yeah, so it seems like you're a man of many hats. You've delved and many different areas within tech so back to that question. And so how did you get interested in crypto, blockchain, and how did that happen for you?
You know, I kept on seeing articles and I kept on seeing things about Bitcoin. And this is going back to the 0809. And this was during the 2008, 2009 crisis. I was probably only about a year or two into my career at that point, and it was probably my first ever once in a lifetime um, economic disaster. Now I'm on my second one already with the current pandemic. So
Yeah.
I started to realize a lot of things weren't right in the system and how things were going. And, in some ways, it made me looking into economics that I had always loved when I went to college
Yeah.
and different money systems. And you start exploring different things. And as you saw the news unfold, I would keep seeing Bitcoin. And so it eventually came to a point where, I got some skin in the game and I started dealing with the local community in Toronto when I had moved there.
Nice. I'm getting an overarching theme when I asked that question about what brought people into the space, and it feels like when catastrophe happens financially or due to for whatever reason. I'm not sure if it's for evil purposes or not. I don't want to talk conspiracies, but it seems like the system it is an okay system, but there's a lot of flaws within the system. And when catastrophe happens, it seems like this other side, which is decentralized means of exchanging value and these new ways of actually interchanging value. It seems that when this goes down, this goes up, right? And there's like a correlation between catastrophes and people, getting more knowledgeable into the space, right?
Yeah, it's almost like an alignment of people realize what's important, and you can see all of these things going wild in the stock market. You can have these CDOs that were so big, the collateralized debt obligations back in 2008, 2009, which wreaked havoc on the American housing market.
Yep.
You can start looking at all those things and people start to realign what their values are. Maybe it isn't this giant house and property values might not ever go down, or, maybe this bank, they just, went belly up. So there are all those things where people start to realize, and you look at the last run that's been on the stock market for the last couple of years, and then it just took one little thing like this to kind of throw it into chaos at that point, and nobody really knows what's going on with that. Now, I've seen some
Yeah.
interesting developments in the cryptocurrency end of things, and it has remained somewhat stable, if not better performing than other market segments.
Yeah, and talking about unstableness, yeah, it's kind of strange because it seems to be belly up. It's like nobody really knows, uh, you know, how to correlate value, like what is fiat and how is everything working together. Like I seen the other day on this guy Mad Money, that picture where he's basically so there's a screen behind them and it's saying like worst market crash ever, and then there's another headline below him that says like best single profits in the stock market ever. And so there's this crazy incongruency between, you know, kind of what the markets are saying and what's going on, you know, in the real street with real people's lives and real people's money, right?
Yeah, yeah, and you know, you always got to be careful. I think that Mad Money guy, that's the guy on CNBC, right?
Yeah,
Who always like honks the horn and like hits things and talks all, you know, and that's a lot of the theater, I think, that is behind a lot of these things. I've even noticed, even on YouTube, you know, people, there's been ads coming up before YouTube videos, and it's all about investing in the stock market, and it's you know, people are trying to drive that at this point. And you know, I think
yeah,
the opposite is happening, where people are starting to hoard money, because again, it goes back to that and realizing what's important, what's stable. And you know, when you look at the fact that, you know, Canada, we had the CERB, and in the United States, I think they had some sort of stimulus check that went out, and you know, you start to realize that a lot of people have been over leveraged and have, you know, bought into these large credit debts and everything along those lines,
yeah,
that have really, you know, to buy what at the end? When the end of the day, you know, you need some food on your plate, you need a house over your head, and you know, maybe some of those material things
yeah.
aren't as important. So I think, you know, this is an opportunity for the cryptocurrency space to really welcome in another group of people that may seem a little bit disaffected, but also offering solutions to what we're seeing in front of us.
Totally. Yeah, totally. I mean, you drew a few correlations there that are, I mean, you know, I guess for some they're easier to see than others, but there's totally a lot of stuff happening there. And hey, so let me, you know, kind of get back to, you know, crypto and kind of ask you what are the various. So there's so many different aspects of you know blockchain and this technology and crypto. You know, what areas have you dabbled in, and you know, what are some of the things that you have done personally in within the cryptocurrency space?
Yeah, I mean, in the early days, as a Canadian, it was kind of hard to get your money into a few places,
Yeah,
to actually buy Bitcoin. I remember signing up for some exchanges, and it was like you're sending it to some place in Czechoslovakia that's routed through Poland, goes through Russia, and I'm just like, well, hold on here. And then I started to look more into it, and I started mining. And at one point, I started off with some ASIC miners that were those little USB block eruptors. And then I kind of worked my way up. I was running two 4U server units,
yeah,
so 8U in total of a few terahashes, probably back around 2011, 2012, somewhere around that time. And was running some GPU mining as well at that time, doing various other coins. Never really considered myself much of a trader.
yeah,
As a miner, I think a lot of people are trying to pay their bills, especially electricity when you're doing it. Unfortunately for me, I lived in a place where hydro was included, so that was maybe something I shouldn't have done in the long.
yeah,
But you know, as we look at it today, it's very hard for somebody to be profitable as a small home miner. Other aspects that I've been in, again, I've done some hackathons. I've built some proof of concepts for people that were based on Ethereum with a couple other Bitcoin Bay members. And, you know, I've done some education and curriculum building, as well as some presentations and some meetups on how to get ready and up and running with Ethereum and Python really quickly. And hopefully we have some content that'll be coming out for that soon with the Bitcoin Bay on some of our social channels.
sweet. That's awesome. So so hey, Michael. So for me, I mean, I understand you know, the basic mechanics of and the incentive behind mining. So you know, I get the theory behind it. You know, I haven't really dove deeply into how it works, but now with a happening that happened, you know, a few days back, right?
Mm-hmm.
How does that work with the mining? You know, how do you see that situation playing out?
Well, for basically the basic mechanics of mining at this point is that the block reward sets the halvening. So every block, there's going to be less and less Bitcoins that are going to be valued or given out for those who have done the computational work for it. So
Okay.
that means Bitcoin is becoming more scarce.
More
So,
scarce. Yeah.
and so new Bitcoin is still out there now. And so what this means is that also on top of that is the computational level for um, uh, generating new Bitcoins is also so much more higher. So what I would have been doing back and running, two 1200 watt, uh, ASIC mining units, 2400 watts, 24 hours a day, generating lots of noise, electricity, and or sorry, not generating electricity, but sucking up electricity and generating heat.
Yeah.
That thing, those rigs are very much less profitable now. So you have a kind of a cost benefit analysis of, do I keep my miner running? Is it economically viable? Can I pay for it? Or do I have to pay to upgrade?
Of course.
So in a lot of ways, it becomes a little bit of an arms race. So who has the best and the most miners wins in terms of being able to find new blocks. So I think in a lot of ways, it will definitely push up Bitcoin prices because we're not in the old days where 100 Bitcoins every 10 minutes. It
That's right.
is we're down to only a few handfuls or a couple handfuls every block. So at that point, I think it will have, as long as electricity becomes, is freely available, not freely available, readily available, and at a cost
Yeah.
of that is, I guess you would say, competitive to keep doing that. I think you will definitely see some price gains, but it's also going to get more expensive for miners.
Gotcha. Gotcha. And that's kind of the beautiful thing that that's a correlation. And I know we know this already, but I mean, for some people that might not know, that's kind of the correlation between, I guess, why people correlate it to gold, as in the fact that it takes a certain amount of power and manpower, desire and time for you to extract the gold, which makes it more expensive, and so that gives it some intrinsic value. And then that's kind of the same way in a digitized systematic format that kind of Bitcoin has, is associated to value in a way, right?
Right,
Am I
right.
saying that correct?
Yeah, and the other aspect of the industry as well that you'd have to consider is the chip makers, and then the people that are making the mining rigs in themselves. Because I know there is a lot of talk about how this is a very energy intensive process and may actually have a bad aspect on environmental impacts. But the other aspect that you have to realize is that even with the miners and minor chip makers are incentivized to also reduce energy costs. So along those lines is that cooling, then you have all of that efficiency with less power, and
Yep.
also being able to fit more chips on a board to be actually produce the hashes to maintain mining. That in itself would definitely drive down costs. I know Antminer S9, 16 terahashes, and I don't know what it runs at, but it's very, very tiny. And what I was running back in 2011, 2012 was two 8U server rack units that were, this tall,
Yeah.
weighed several pounds and, 2,400 watts.
Yep.
So as there is a little bit of, I don't know if Moore's law necessarily applies in this case, but there is definitely that correlation of being able to have more threads on to processing and also driving down energy costs with more power.
Gotcha. So there's a lot of variables, and so I guess if anybody's interested in reaching out, and so it seems like you have a good amount of solid knowledge, technical knowledge, and I guess from getting your hands dirty and trying things out, you have a certain degree of experience. So if somebody wants to know more, I mean, I'm just putting it out there. I mean, feel free to contact Michael, and later on we'll get some information so the good folks could get at you if somebody has those type of questions, right? Because
Exactly.
sometimes, I mean, somebody coming in from the outside in, I mean, there's this whole degree of, shyness, or do I want to ask the right thing? But once again, I just want to put it out there that, this is totally an inclusive community, and anybody that wants to know more is welcome to ask, and don't be shy, don't be afraid, right?
Yeah, everybody is at different levels, and I think anybody who is at a higher level of their knowledge is almost in this space, especially since we're few and far between in some areas. We are more than happy to talk to somebody and explain and help them learn, and then learn off them as well.
Nice. That is awesome. And hey, so you mentioned the hackathons, and so I guess you've competed in a few. So talk to me about a few of the hackathons that you've competed, and what are hackathons? How did they work? What have you learned? And what was the overall experience with hackathons?
I did Block Geeks, the first Block Geeks hackathon. I've done ETH Waterloo, and there was another one that I did, and then I helped out with Crypto Chicks on their first ever hackathon as well.
Sweet.
And some of those, and really, they're a great experience to meet other people that are interested in developing the technologies as well. And it's a great place as well if you're stuck. A lot of these teams, they're willing to help each other. Oh, you don't know this, unless it's like you're doing something very competitive to theirs. But there's plenty of resources on hand, and it's a great time. I know it gets down to the wire, and you haven't showered for 48 hours, and you're pushing 72, and you still can't figure anything out because
Yeah,
you're also so tired. But it's
that's right.
it's it's almost like a little marathon. But you get it's a great experience, and building on top of it. And if you don't win, that's no big deal. You have learned something, and you have
Yep.
something to build on top of with your experience.
Yeah, that's awesome. And the thing about life is, like, necessity is the mother of all creation. So when you put yourself out there, I mean, I know when you go through the motion, oh my God, should I go? Shouldn't I go? You probably get that degree of anxiety. But to what you're saying, probably when you're there, you get joined with a team and you start cracking at it. It's mutually beneficial because you gain experience, and you meet new people, and I know that a lot of sometimes the issue with us human beings is we want to do everything ourselves, or we have this bias where we think we're really good at everything,
Hmm.
and sometimes it takes you being objective to say, okay, maybe I'm really good at this, but I'm not so good at this, and then joining hackathons can help you grow overall, right?
Yeah, and I've tried to encourage so many people to participate, and there is that shyness, like,
So what
oh,
happens? So what happens when you say, like, hey, come on over? Like, are they like, no, maybe next year? Like,
oh, I'm not good enough. I don't know about this. And I know, when you hear the word hackathon, they seem to think that you've got to be that guy with the black hoodie hunched over your keyboard breaking into something, right?
yeah,
And we all have talents, and you can build out a business plan. You can
exactly.
also work on, hey, listen, all I know is HTML. Good for you. You're now on the front end development. Make it look great.
Yeah,
Um, you know, there's so many other skills. Even if you're new to it, use it as an opportunity, because it doesn't matter, really, in the end, if you win or lose. It's about learning and moving on forward and helping build the community.
yeah.
And to me, and I seem to think Bitcoin Bay in Toronto and Mississauga all have the same attitude as community over everything.
Sweet. Yeah, no, that's true. That's a good message, and that's a real message. And hey, so talk to me about and why you're interested in crypto. What got you into crypto? Is there a story behind like?
I think that was basically what I explained before. Is I saw the financial crisis kind of happening as I'm just fresh out of college, getting things going,
Yeah,
and I kept watching this. And I always loved economics in college, and a lot of this stuff, especially in the macroeconomic end of things, is you know just this money was getting printed out of nowhere. And I remember asking the professor, to the point that the rest of the class was like, just Mike, give it up. Like, and I'm just like, but where does it come from? Right? Well, we're doing this to fight inflation. So you start learning more and more about it. And college, it didn't stop if I learned something about in school, I would still follow it after the fact. And then I think around that time, Bitcoin had been released, and you know, I didn't pay much attention to it, but I kept seeing more and more of it happening. And I'd mention it to other people, and other people were saying, "Oh, you're stupid. You shouldn't waste your time on that. It's going to be worth nothing." And then you'd see it more in the news. And then I noticed that, I think there was a big hullabaloo over of WikiLeaks at the time, and they got cut off from PayPal. Now they're accepting Bitcoin. I forget what they had done back then and released some sort of documents. I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, that's interesting. So they seem to think it's worth something. And then after that, I've never participated in Silk Road, but then you would see that the Silk Road happened. And it's like, well, it obviously has some sort of value if people are trading with it. Now, at the time, those people thought, hey, listen, it's anonymous. Nobody's going to pay attention to it. As Bitcoin matures, those addresses that have ever dealt on the Silk Road are probably going to have some questions to answer, further on down the lines if they ever move those coins, right?
Yep, yep.
And there's stuff out there that's like chain analysis, and it's like, well, this Bitcoin came along from here, and then it went with this one, but it originally came from the Silk Road. So what was that lineage to it ended up part of that Bitcoin even ended up over to this guy, who then traded it in for cash. So it's interesting in that respect. But I kept watching that. That meant it had value. So it just kept coming up, and then finally I moved to Toronto and I saw Bitcoin Bay. And Bitcoin Bay at the time was about 4 people sitting around a bar somewhere near King and Spadina. Antoine was there, a couple other people, and then eventually I met Jerry, and then we started building on from there. And as the meetups grew, we are where we are today.
That's awesome. Hey, so, and in regards to, so I know you're leading you're leading the way in Waterloo, and starting up Bitcoin Bay Waterloo, the meetups. How is that going? How did I guess it was a natural progression, right? How is that going right now?
Well, the pandemic has definitely thrown a wrench into what we were planning. Pre-pandemic, we were actually getting to the point where we were looking for a new home in Kitchener-Waterloo, where we could actually hold some quiet time and have people present, ask questions, and discussions. Right now, and we've been going on for about a year and a half now, maybe a little bit less than that. And we started out with a couple of guys around the table, and we've expanded it up to about 20 people that come out. And we have some regulars that are now coming out. So what we're doing right now is we're trying to organize something during the pandemic for people to join us on Zoom. We also have all the other Zoom meetings and other meetups that we have with Bitcoin Bay that I encourage anyone from our KW meetup to go out to and explore. And once things get a little bit more stable in the world with the pandemic, we're hoping that at some point we can have some more, inter-meetup Zoom sessions between Kitchener, Waterloo, and Toronto, and more.
Sweet. So it just seems like there's no stopping this this movement, right? It's close to a revolution, but it is a strong movement of a powerful idea, and ideas. Some ideas are so powerful you really can't kill them, right? Like it just seems like there's no way of killing this this really core idea of a better way of interchanging value, and I find that's a phenomenal topic, right? And I think the more people hear about it, and then the more people, like you said, start to recognize what's going on with the financial system. Like it's just incredible. I mean, if you look at the US, what are they at, like $2.3 trillion printed already? And I mean, we're not even, I mean, I know that the US government printed, I think, 1 trillion for the last catastrophe.
Right.
They're at 2 point something trillion. They're probably more than that as we speak. And it's incredible, right?
It's funny that you should mention there is no stopping it. And I think a lot of that has to do with the ideas and the movements that you were talking about. But there's so many other cryptocurrencies out there, and along with Bitcoin, is that their network effect, literally the technological network effect in its size is almost too large for any single government actor or any other single entity to actually stop it.
Yeah.
If you mess with the blockchain, you know, we fork it and we go on somewhere else. And the network effect is so large that it to even like if we wanted to mess with Bitcoin itself at its current network state, how many millions or billions of dollars will you have to spend in computational power from around the globe to actually do a double spend attack? So you'd have to spend $1 billion to just over $1 billion. I don't even want to talk about like how much computational power that would require. And then at that point, uh, basically do a double spend 2 Bitcoins once or 1 Bitcoin twice, sorry. And at that point, you've done one double spend at a cost of how many billions of dollars? So really, the network incentives in itself, among other cryptocurrencies, have basically ensured fair play, and it's much more easy for everybody to play by the rules than to circumvent the system, because the network and the incentives are set up in such a way that it eliminates bad actors from a technological standpoint.
Yeah, see, that is some powerful stuff you're saying there. Because aside from the whole idea, there's the whole system that's backing this idea, and the mathematical aspect of it, and the computational aspect of it. Um, but the idea is so powerful, and you have so many smart, bright, young, males and females, old folks, young folks. I mean, just across the spectrum. And then if you see, I mean, this whole global movement, I would say, it's incredible. I mean, it feels. Now talk to me about, do you think the progression, and the way it's going towards mass adoption, is it going too slow, is it going too fast? What are your thoughts about mass adoption with crypto?
I think you're going to see waves of it for a while. um, I don't seem to think there is going to be any tipping point anytime soon where all of a sudden everybody's getting on board. It's not going to be like everybody used taxis one day and the next day almost everybody's using Uber, right? I think it's going to be
Yeah.
slow progression. I don't seem to think that mainstream adoption is there yet. And I don't think the technology is ready for it yet. I see that right now we're planting those little seeds in in everybody's minds,
That's right.
that almost everybody's aware of it. You say Bitcoin to somebody
That's right.
now,
That's right.
everybody knows something. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. And you got to remember back when Bitcoin Bay first started up.
That's right.
What's that?
Yeah, just the fact that it's woven, inside our conscious DNA, like the fabric of our consciousness, is already a feat in itself. Because I mean, this thing has, there's no real, like, it's just like you said, a network effect. It's not like a traditional legacy company that you shoot, a big marketing $1 million budget and then you generate growth. This is from the ground up, right?
Exactly. Now, it's not saying that other people haven't tried that whole, big marketing campaign. We've seen a lot of those things come and go with a lot of those projects, a lot of those tokens,
Yeah,
and other blockchains themselves, right?
that's right. That's right. Yeah, no, that's awesome. And so, and in terms of the meetup that you're running, the biweekly meetup that you're spearheading in Waterloo, what do you hope to accomplish within the next couple of years from now? What would you say is your goal?
So I've definitely seen a couple when I first moved here. A couple years moved back here a couple of years ago. I noticed that there were some groups back in town, in this town, and they really didn't seem to be operating for a while. And there is some, a few blockchain companies that are here, a lot of
Yeah.
cryptocurrency companies, or a couple that are here. I mean, it's the basically where Vitalik Buterin wrote his white paper for Ethereum.
Yep.
So found it strange that there wasn't more of a community here. So what I want to do is open up a community that is open to discussion, that's willing to teach other people other things, whether they're from a very rudimentary level all the way up to, expert level. And I want to be able to have a forum for us to kind of share about our ideas and welcome new people into the space.
That's awesome. That is awesome, Michael. And if people want to get a hold of you, and shoot you a few questions or just get in contact, what would you say are the best forums?
So one, you can reach out to me at mike@bitcoinbay.ca.
Okay.
You can also reach out to me on LinkedIn. You can probably find me there by finding my name. And anything else, definitely meetup.com. I will check those often, and I will give community updates as things change with the current situation in Kitchener-Waterloo. And hopefully we get to see everybody in person, in the not too long future.
Yes, I mean, you know what, online sessions, Zoom calls are amazing, but I mean, sharing a drink with your friends and shooting some conversation and you know, being able to socialize person to person is something that who knows what's going to happen, right? I mean, but I do cherish those times, right?
Definitely, definitely. It's I think if things go well, I think we'll see some in-person meetups by the end of the year, and hopefully we can get things under control and grow in our community.
That's right. Well, the beautiful thing is, I mean, it's kind of like an anti-fragile system, right? Like everything you throw at it just makes it stronger. So, I mean, no matter where we are, we're accessible, and if anybody wants to contact you, I mean, they can. And just want to put that out there. And Mike, I just want to say thanks for taking the time to kind of bounce around some ideas with me, and I appreciate you doing that.
Yeah, no problem. Have a great day, Juan.
Nice.